Hej och välkomna till Investerarafton special. Idag ska vi presentera 2 investeringsmöjligheter i ädelmetaller och för batteritillverkningen helt avgörande metaller. Eftersom dagens bolag är engelskspråkiga kommer presentationen nu att fortsätta på engelska. Hello and welcome, and if you tune in to Investerarafton special from Canada, good morning. As you know, in that case, the early bird catches the worm. If you watch this live, you can interact with the management, and you will do so by putting your questions in the chat line. Feel free to ask any questions during the presentation, but beware that we will deal with your question in the Q&A session immediately after the official presentation. You can use English or Swedish when you ask your questions. Investerare Special is a cooperation between Investerarafton.se, Scandinavian Alliance, and Scandinavian Alliance is a full-service company expert, and as such can connect you with any company in the Scandinavian and Northern European markets and its financing. For more information, go to scandinavianalliance.com. The broadcast is brought to you via Investerarafton.se, Direkt Studios, and the presenting company. Well, as I said, today's theme, gold, lithium, copper, and manganese has really been in the spotlight lately, not only for the fact that almost everything around us comes from mining, but also because of the possibility for you as an investor to literally strike gold with these companies. First out today is Turku Resources, a mineral exploration company focusing on what I would call recycling old assets in a stable jurisdiction. So I believe that we now are connected with Julian Davey, the CEO of Turku Resources. Hello, Julian. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, Carlo, for this invitation and this introduction. It's a real pleasure to be here and to virtually present Turku Resource. What, as you said, I believe it's a good investment opportunity in the recycling of old mining camps, and I strongly believe that it should be considered. So my name, as you said, is Julian Davey. I'm the president and CEO of Turku Resource. I'm involved with Turku since 2017, and the focus of the company is really to generate new exploration projects and making new discoveries. We all know that exploration is risky. It's a business with a lot, which is complex. And I'm going to show you in this presentation how we think at Turku we are able to minimize the risk and what strategy are we using to choose the right project in the right area. That's why we have chosen the title here, Advancing High Impact Exploration Opportunities in Stable World-Class Geological Settings. So I will let you read the cautionary notes, but today we are going to talk about Turku itself, the corporate, the strategy, and I'm going to introduce you to 2 different projects, one in South Arizona, close to the Tombstone City. We call the project Silver Strike, and the other one in Matagami, which is on the north part of the Abitibi Greenstone Belt, which is really famous, well known for its gold projects and gold mines. And there we have 3 projects that we call the 3 A's for Apollo, Atlas, and Admiral. So looking at the project itself, as I was mentioning, exploration is really complex. And we believe that to give us all the chances and to minimize all the risks that it comes with, we should try to manage that risks. That's why we are now listed on 3 different stock exchange. We are listed in Canada on the Venture Stock Exchange under the ticker TKU, but we are also on the Frankfurt Exchange. And in the U.S. market under the ticker TRKUF. As I was mentioning, we are a project generator. That means that we are really in the first steps of the exploration and the discovery of new mining properties. And we are really focusing on choosing the right project at the right place. That's why the project generator is interesting. And the first steps, of course, is to make sure that the project has what we call the social acceptability. We know that exploration has impact, of course, on the neighborhood. So the success of an exploration project is also to make sure to have the acceptability of the host environments. So to do this, we also have a team, and we believe that we have the right team to make those discoveries. In terms of strategy, it comes with the time we spent on choosing and making the due diligence on the project. We are looking in stable jurisdictions. That is really interesting and important because exploration, as we know, it's a long process, and we don't want to have surprise during that process. And we are also looking in established infrastructure area because we prefer to invest our budget, our exploration budget, on the exploration itself, rather than on trying to access the project itself. So, for example, we don't want to spend too much money in a helicopter, and rather to spend it on drilling, for example. And as you were mentioning, Carlo, also we are looking for projects in historical mining camps that are what we call overlooked. Geologically, it makes a lot of sense because in area that has already produced mines, we have data that we are able to use. We need to update that data, of course. We need to make sure that we are able to use it, but we are able to evaluate a lot of information. And in historical mining camps, the mineralization system itself has already been demonstrated. And very often, the geological knowledge has evolved since the period of mining. So if I take an example in a mining camp that has produced his mineralization 50 or 60 years ago, the knowledge has evolved, and we are able to look differently how to access new areas that could be really interesting. So we are applying modern exploration techniques to those overlooked mining camps, and this is what we're doing currently in Arizona and in Quebec. We believe that if we look at Turku, we believe that we are an attractive relative valuation. It means that if we look at our peers, so I took an example of 35 different junior mining exploration that are listed in the Canadian Venture Exchange and that are exploring. We're seeing that with our 5 to 8 million market cap, we are under the average of a 20 million market cap. So we believe that Turku is still a great opportunity if we compare us to the peers. And thanks to the strategy we have by choosing the right project, we were able to attract people or investors like Mr. Eric Sprott, who is a well-known gold and silver investor. And we do have, as I will show you now, the experienced team to manage those projects. In terms of team, if I look at our team, it's a small team because we are a small company. And we put a lot of effort on having the right exploration expertise to advance the project. So our chairman, Mr. Bernard Lapointe, is a known geologist in Quebec who has made an interesting discovery in his life. He discovered one of the biggest phosphate deposits in the world, which is the La Capole deposit. It is now they are building the mine right now to be able to produce phosphate in the near future. He has over 35 years of experience, built his own company that were transformed into a big mining company, which named Ariane Phosphate. Myself, exploration geologist since about 25 years, working in North and South America mostly for exploration stage and advanced stage project. I had the chance to co-found my private exploration company in 2015, which we were able to sold to Turku Resource for the projects in Quebec in 2017, and that's how I got involved with Turku. I'm backed by my CFO, which is Kyle Appleby. He is based in Toronto, has a lot of contact and interaction with other mining companies. We have David Watkinson, who is our engineer. He has experience at a different level. He has worked for companies like Kinross Gold or Placer Dome, work on more advanced projects, which help us a lot to understand where do we have to go with our small exploration projects, where do they have to go until to be a more advanced project. And Jeff Shepard, he is also an accountant. He is based in Saskatoon and one of the founder of the company with a lot of knowledge in mining, in junior mining companies. If we're looking at our capital structure, as I was mentioning, we are listed in 3 different exchanges, which give us a lot of exposure for our investors. We have 72 million shares outstanding here. 72 million shares outstanding with some options and warrants. You see the warrants, if they are exercised, we are around 8 cents, 7 cents today. If we are able to exercise the warrants, we will be able to get another $3.5 million Canadian dollars in the bank, which will give us more space and more capacity to advance. Important thing is, of course, the shareholders, and we believe that we have a really tightly held structure that is interesting. What I could say is the most important thing to remember is that with the first 25 shareholders of the company, which the management is involved, myself, people like Mr. Eric Sprott, we have an exploration company like Exla, close people, friends and family. So the 25 first shareholders hold 72% of all the shares of Turku. So we believe it's an interesting, tightly held structure. So the day we're going to have interesting news to release and good results on our project, we believe that we're going to be able to, it will have an impact on the share price. We are followed also by a London-based analyst who, when he saw the first results, I'm going to show you some numbers on the first drill results in Arizona. When he saw those results, he strongly believes that we should have a lot of confidence in terms of the future results and what's coming up for the Arizona project. So looking at the project itself now, we have we're working in 2 different areas. Both areas are mining friendly. If we look at that Fraser Institute list, we see that Quebec and Arizona are in the top 8 or top 7 best place to invest. Stable jurisdictions, that's really important, and access to the projects easy access to the project is also really important. So in Quebec, we have in what we call northern Quebec. It's probably not the far north, but it's still in northern Quebec. We are in Abitibi, we are in the Matagami area, and we have a project, 3 different projects looking for gold, essentially with some copper, zinc, and silver attached to it. And in South Arizona, we are looking in a project essentially for its silver, but we were really happy to see that we also have interesting gold, copper, and lead zinc results, as well as manganese also in that area. I'm going to show you a little bit of the Silver Strike project. So in the Tombstone area, Arizona now, you probably heard of the Tombstone area maybe before. If you didn't see the famous film on Tombstone, you should look at it. It's one of the early southwestern rush for silver in that area, and now the town is based on the tourist attraction about those that time and that famous gunfight that was happening at the OK Corral with the brothers. That's an historic, interesting fact in Tombstone. So the area was discovered first in 1877, and since it has several different periods of mining, and since 85, there is simply no modern exploration that has been conducted in the area. And a little bit of saying that by recycling project, as you were mentioning, Carlo, one of the known word that we're saying is that the best place to discover a mine is in the shadow of a head frame. So the Tombstone area has produced mostly between 1877 and 1936. It has produced 32 million ounces of silver at a really high average grade. And that was one of the reasons we were attracted by that project, is to see the high average grade of 25 ounce per ton as an average historical production grade, which is really interesting. And digging into the historical information, we were able to see also that there were some little bit of gold, copper, lead, zinc that has been also produced. So for a geologist, seeing that it's not only one single mineral like silver that has been produced in an area, but also other metals, it shows that it has an interesting exploration model and mineralization model, as I will show you now, which model we are looking for. So not going into too many details about the history of the area, but here it shows that simply that the first 40 to 50 years, it has mostly produced that 32 million ounces of silver. Just to say that the historical silver price at that time was $1 per ounce, and today we are at $25 per ounce as an average. So we had a second production period during the 1980s for 5 years, when we had a spike in the silver price, and the Tombstone Silver Mines Company produced a little bit of silver and gold out of a open pit area close to the city. It was a lower grade material, and since that period, there was simply no exploration ever done since we came in 2020, when we have been presented to that project. We made a first agreement, a first exploration due diligence phase with drilling. We were able to recover the same historical high-grade results, and then we renegotiate the project, and we now own 100% of the Silver Strike project that is owned by Turku. And we are planning in 2022 the next phase that will come with drilling in the fall period. So if we look at the Arizona state map, without going into too many details, but it just shows that the Tombstone area is in a corridor of a lot of porphyry system. It is what we call the elephant country in terms of mines. We have around us, south of the border, we have the known Buena Vista mine, which is a monster of 4 billion tons of reserves. It's a silver, copper, lead, zinc deposit. We have companies like Freeport that has a porphyry system mine in his backyard. We have Rio Tinto and BHP who is working also in the area. And west from Tombstone, to South 32, which is a mining Australian company, for $1.8 billion in 2018. So it shows that that area has a lot of interest in terms of porphyry and mining projects. So this is the map of our land position. The town of Tombstone is here to the northeast. We have patent claim, what we are calling patent claim. So we own the surface and the underground rights, and we own also here a almost 30 square kilometer of land position in that area. So this is the model. This is what we're looking for. Intrusion, a lot of heat that remobilize the mineralization that goes through the sediments and through the different layers until the surface. Historically, they were able to mine only the 200 first meters just because of a technicality, because they were not able to deal with the water table that was apparent at 200 meters. Today, in these days, it's not a technical problem anymore. There's a lot of mines dealing with water. That's not a problem. But in 1800, they had difficulties to pump the water and being able to go lower than the water table. So we know that the mineralization goes further further deep under, but it has simply not been mined, and it has been left there. And 95% of all the production was only on surface. So we know that we have a lot of resource under those past mines. And this model has a lot of similarities with the Hermosa project I was talking to. We are talking about the same sediments, the same type of rock, the same of age, and the same type of mineralization. So rapidly, I'd like to show you some of the results. When we do our first due diligence, we were able to come with numbers like 2,000 grams per ton of silver on grab sample that we are simply being able to grab in the veins on surface. So there is a lot of mineralization still accessible on surface. And when we start drilling last year with what we call RC drilling, reverse circulation drilling method, we were able to recover numbers like 1,500 grams per ton over 1.5 meters, 214 over slightly interesting length. So we know that the high-grade mineralization is still there, and now we are working on planning the next phase, which will be executed in the fall period, somewhere between October and November this year. We were able, during our validation and first drill program, we were able to recover historical values close to the past mine, but also at 4 kilometers away, here to the south at the Groundhog area, we were able also to recover values like 2,000 grams per ton. So the system has at least 4 kilometers long, and now we have to infill that 4 kilometer long trend to see how the mineralization is along that 4 kilometer known trend. So just not to repeat myself, but just to say that looking at the rock and what we know about the mineralization now, that we are pretty confident that it really looks like the Hermosa project further to the west in Tombstone. Next phase, we just received a few days ago the preliminary results from the first MAG survey. It's an airborne geophysical survey around the property. It's the first survey ever done. So this will help us to see a little bit how the rocks are and to prepare the next drill program that we're going to propose 5,000 to 6,000 meters of drill program later this year, around October or November. So that was for the Silver Strike project in Arizona, and I will now talk rapidly to the Matagami area for the 3As project, 3As for Apollo, Atlas, and Admiral. So this is a project that is located on the last structure north of the Abitibi Greenstone Belt. And the reason why we have chosen those projects in close to Matagami is because along that structure we have other mines, gold mine that is already known, like the Detour Lake mine, that is a over 15 million ounces of gold producing mine. And there were simply almost no exploration conducted in that area. Matagami is a historical zinc area, and it was really astonished. We were really astonished when digging into the data that we saw that a lot of results were simply not assayed for gold. They were only looking for zinc, simply looking for zinc, and not for other minerals. So that opens a lot of opportunities for us to find new gold projects. So these are the three projects along the regional fault, which is the extension of the Detour Lake mine. That fault is named Sunday Lake, and the Sunday Lake fault. And we have all the geological similarities than what they have further to the west in Detour Lake and Kirkland Lake mining camps. So we acquired those projects in 2016. We started to do a teal sampling survey, geophysical survey, did a lot of compilation, and we understood that there were a little bit of exploration done in the past, but further to the south, because at that time, in the 1990 to 2000, when they were exploring in that area, they thought that the fault, the region fault, was going further to the south, and that's where they were drilling, and they were never able to understand why at the end of each of their drill hole there were some gold values increasing. And they were not understanding why, because they were thinking that they were already crossing that fault and that they were after the fault. but they never were able to explain. And the reason finally we understood is because that fault is further to the north, and they were simply coming closer to the interesting part, which has simply never been drill tested since today. We also conducted during the winter, which is a good period to do some field work, geophysical field work. We just completed a ground IP survey, which is a geophysical method allows us to understand where the sulfides and mineralization could be and where the structures are. And that survey bring us a new priority area and 9 new zones that has simply never been drill tested around the high intrusions. And these are the next drill targets that we are going to drill starting in September of this year. So a lot of new areas that has simply not been tested recently. So to wrap up that presentation, it's coming up for Turku in the next month. We have now optimized our targets with the geophysical survey in Quebec and Arizona. We have new data. We are able to fine-tune where we're going to drill. In September, we'll have our first drill program in Matagami, and a little bit later in October, November, we'll have our drill program in Arizona. And then the next phase will come in the month after. So that was my presentation. If you have any questions, of course, don't hesitate. Please follow us on our social media platform. We release there a lot of information too, but don't hesitate to contact me directly if you need it also. Thank you. That was my presentation. Back to you, Carlo.
And we had a technical glitch here. So while you were talking about the elephant findings, so you referred to it, the elephant, some of your, the picture was all up there, but some of your conclusions just evaporated. So if you conclude that picture, what was the main message there?
The main message was to say that we are in an area with a lot of neighbors that has really big porphyry system, and what we call geologically a porphyry system, which is big mines with a lot of tonnage and grades. So it's an area that is known to have other big mines in the area. We have just south to the border in Mexico, we have the Buena Vista mine, which is a really big mine. And further to the west, we have the Hermosa project I was referring to also.
Excellent. So we sorted that out. And could I just ask you about, a combination here, the war in Ukraine, which I don't think really affect you, but inflation that was before and during and will probably continue here. How does that affect you?
Definitely. The war in Ukraine doesn't really directly, as you said, affect us, but definitely the attraction for commodity is there. I think there is a pressure on all the metals and on the gold sector, and I believe that pressure will stay for unfortunately, let's say for depending on what's happening, but that inflation gives a lot of pressure on gold, silver. And that will remain investment and good opportunities for the next years. That's for sure.
And would it be fair to say, and I will of course expose my ignorance here in the industry, but then again I have you here as my expert. But would it be fair to say that if you're a project manager rather than actually producing the metals, you will be less affected by inflation on the cost side?
Yes, because the investors are a little bit different, and the reason why you invest is different. Absolutely, the costs we have what are our major costs is labor, and that's not they have not the same problem in the producing mines, for example. But it's a good suggestion, as you say. Definitely, the producing mines probably have different difficulties than the exploration, the project generator itself. Yes.
So one could say that in this case, you will benefit more of cost inflation, EI, the raw material price, the price of the raw material is going up. Whereas, I mean, obviously you will see the cost, but you're not so capital intensive than someone else.
Exactly. We will benefit from the rise of the gold or any metals. It will be a more attractive place to invest rather than to have more costs to produce them. Yes. And
obviously, you mentioned here in your report an analyst report, and they refer to drilling, silver drilling, 5 holes. And obviously, you are, well, sensitive to news, or the share price is sensitive to news, I take it. So tell us here, what would be the next news? Is that connected to the 5 holes? And give us a time frame here, and bearing in mind that we may not all be exploration experts here. So are we talking a quarter? Are we talking half a year? Or?
Yep. That's a critical question and really important for us, because exploration companies and junior companies like us are, as you said, 100% related to and exposed to its capacity to reveal news. And we are doing exploration by period, and during those periods we are able to release a lot of news. But it doesn't mean that between those more high activity period we are doing nothing. It's just that we are planning or preparing stuff and are not able to release as many news as we would like to. But to resume that, I would say that we will have some news in the next weeks, let's say days and weeks, now for some results, the geophysical results. We're going to give you a lot of news on that for the market, just to show people what was the results. And we will be also able during the summer to reveal news on the preparation on the drill program. And the next real intense exploration phase will be in September for the Quebec-based project, and in October, November for the Arizona project. These are the next period and next phases.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Julian. So basically, it will be a very hectic year for Turku Resources, for the management, the shareholders, and the markets to watch out for. Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. And if there is any more questions, you had the contact details at the end of this presentation. Thank you, and bonne chance.
Merci beaucoup.
and have a continuing pleasant day, I hope.
Thank you very much.
With that, we'll take a short break, and we'll connect the next company that's also long distance. So we'll see you in a couple of seconds. Bye. Så, välkommen tillbaks and this presentation will now continue in English. There is one common denomination for mobile phones, laptops, digital cameras and electric vehicles, and that is rechargeable batteries. Without lithium, there will be no rechargeable batteries. Ion Energy will aspire to become the go-to company as far as lithium in Asia is concerned. And therefore, it's with great pleasure that I now have Ali Haji, CEO of Ion Energy, and he's here to tell us how this will be achieved. Ali, can you hear me?
Yes, indeed, I can. Thank you very much for that gracious introduction.
Well, my pleasure. Well, Ali, the floor is yours, so take it away. We're eager to listen.
Much appreciated. Ion Energy is a company that I co-founded in August 2017, looking for lithium in Mongolia. We started the company with a consortium of individuals, which I will touch on shortly, and we've been trading since August 2020 on the platforms that you see here on the screen today. That's your typical disclaimer that you have to share for as you trade on public exchanges. A bit about the team. I think it's always important to highlight the skill set. I've had 13 years of international asset management experience. I've been in mining for the last 6 years. My father's been in mining for the last 4 decades, so I guess you could say it runs in the blood. Matthew Wood is my chairman. He is a serial mining entrepreneur, a Rio Tinto gold scholar, an excellent geologist, but also a fantastic entrepreneur. He's had a number of exits, including the sale of Avanco Resources to Oz Minerals back in March 2018 for 440 million Aussie. And prior to that, he had some experience in Mongolia, where he sold a coal mine for $500 million within an 18-month remit, which we'll talk about in just a second here. Wendy Lee is my director in Asia. She ensures that we have the necessary access to the strategics that would ultimately be an offtake or strategic buyout partner in the future. She's worked at South Gobi Resources, at the Noble Group, where she worked on offtake agreements for copper, gold, and coal between Mongolia and China. As with any jurisdiction, we think it's important to have local members on your board. Half my board is Mongolian. Batatuma Roger, the chief executive of Step Gold, resides on my board. He's also a special advisor to the Ministry of Mining. He was with the prior government. He was reappointed with the new government. So we are politically agnostic in country. Irrespective of who's in power, we're able to get things done. Anil Varach is my investment banking professional, ex-Dundee, ex-Goodman, having raised over $1 billion from mining companies around the world, sits on my board and advises on the capital markets advisory side of things. And Tushin Kishikzurin is my exploration director. He ensures we have the necessary access to equipment and personnel to get the job done in Mongolia. John McVicker is my chief financial officer and ex-EY partner. We're happy to have him on board. He came out of retirement to join our story. And then the next 4 guys, and ultimately the 5th that I will speak to in just a second, is where our lithium experience should shine. Paul Fornitzari is our chief strategic advisor. He is a partner at Vaskin, where he leads the LATAM Global Mining Group. He was the original chairman of Lithium Americas, now a $5 billion company. He was also a founding director of Neo Lithium, which sold to Zijin last year, if you recall, for 960 million Canadian. Don Haynes is my senior technical advisor. He ensures that we have the necessary exploration plans ready to go. He also reviews the work that's being done by our Mongolian counterparts and then designs our next step forward. Don has worked on multiple lithium assets around the world, but more importantly, sits on the board of the TSX and the OSC, where he defines what should be part of a 43-101 for a brine company to go public. Dr. Hashbat Dashtetsaren is my in-country PhD hydrogeologist that ensures that Don's instructions are carried out and they report back into each other. Dr. Mark King, who is not on this slide, is a very recent addition. He was the qualified person on Neo Lithium when it sold to Zijin last year, but he was also one of the first people to write the 43-101s on Lithium America. So a very seasoned team of foremost industry experts leading our exploration charge. Dr. David Deek, a PhD from Oxford University, previously a CTO, SVP at Lithium Americas, and prior to that, he was at Tesla, where he helped build Gigafactory 1. So very much supply chain driven, an individual that would ultimately see this all come together. But hopefully through that, I've shown you that we've built a team of commendable individuals with the right amount of experience. So we started the company in 2017 when we believed the world was on the brink of a clean green energy revolution, or a cyclical nature of lithium, if you will. And sure enough, on the back of the pandemic, we're now seeing that that is in fact the case. We are moving towards a cleaner, greener future, and Ion Energy is well positioned to serve that demand. We now control 110,000 hectares in Mongolia. We're first movers in the brine space, and we've conducted exploration on both our assets. Why Mongolia? This is a question that I'm asked on an ongoing basis across, essentially the planet when I travel and I do marketing or fundraising. Mongolia, in our view, is a country that is untapped for the potential for lithium. It is 1.5 million square kilometers with a population of 3.5 million people, of which only 3% of the country has been explored. So a very resource-rich country with the likes of Rio Tinto operating in country, a country that we expect to see a lot of value from. We've been there for over a decade. As I mentioned, our first foray there was in 2010. Combined as a management team, 150 years plus of experience. 20% of the nation's GDP comes from mining, so you have a lot of skilled labor in country. You don't require expensive expats to help run your operations. We have worked with the government at different levels of government, including the Prime Minister and the President and the Ministry of Mines, where we've understood that the country is open for mining. And Rio Tinto essentially tripling down on their investment, putting $7.5 billion back into the country, is indicative of this being a good jurisdiction to do mining in. Let's not forget where Mongolia lies on the global map. It is sandwiched between Russia and China. China today consumes the vast majority of the world's lithium, 53%, and produces 82% of the world's batteries that end up in vehicles and cell phones and laptops, as was earlier pointed out by the Globe. So our proximity to that market is obviously a strategic advantage. My chairman's first foray into Mongolia was in 2010, where he raised $20 million on the ASX using a vehicle with no assets. Went back to Mongolia, acquired a number of coal-bearing mines, de-risked them through exploration, arrived at an early resource indication, and then ultimately exited the brand pool of Thailand for $500 million in cash 18 months later. A big win for us, a big win for Mongolia, but it also set the stage of support that we needed to execute in country. In 2016, when I joined a group of investors, including my chairman and two of my board members, we looked to acquire Step Gold from Centerra Gold. In 2018, we took it public, and as of March 2020, it is a gold producer. June 2020, commercial gold producer. So not only have we shown that as a group we can bring assets to early resource indication and exit, we can also produce. And if those of you that are familiar with mining, only 3% of companies go into production. So quite the feat in itself. Important to mention that when Hunu Coal was exited, there were 300 staff, of which 2 were expats. Step Gold today has 250 staff with 1 expat. So we employ local, we operate local, and we trade internationally. Ion Energy, a story that will very much mirror that of Hunu Coal, $2.7 million IPO. We now have acquired 2 assets with 110,000 hectares. All our in-country staff are Mongolian. And the goal there is to consolidate the lithium licenses, arrive at early resource indications, and then ultimately exit to a strategic. And we'll talk about that in just a second as well. So Babayul is our flagship license. It's 81,000 hectares in Sukhothai province. It's located 23 kilometers from the Chinese border, and it's in the Gobi Desert. So very arid conditions, ideal for what would be required in the lithium sphere. It's an endoheric basin. The early work back in 2016 shows results of up to 811 ppm. The ratios for potassium, magnesium, calcium, sodium, and boron are low, which means that extraction through direct lithium extraction would be quite advantageous and make this an economically viable project. 250 days of sunshine, very high winds would aid in evaporation, but as I said, I believe direct lithium extraction to be the ideal modus operandi for this asset. Not to forget an important aspect, which is Sukhothai province will be home to Asia's largest wind farm. So using renewable energy to essentially extract a metal that allows us to have a renewable future sort of ticks all those ESG boxes that you would expect it to. We've seen a number of strong indications and anomalies on this asset. In fact, that image there you see on the left was myself and my technical team on site back in March. But we've seen a number of very strong anomalies. I mentioned earlier that the maximum grade obtained was 811 ppm. We're now seeing up to 1,502 ppm, so almost double the grade that was seen historically. And for a sense of scale, this asset is about 60 kilometers wide by 16 kilometers long, so almost 5 times the size of the city of Vancouver. Massive potential, massive license, and we're looking forward to the additional drilling programs as well as exploration programs. That's our auger rig on site. You see some of the brine being pumped up to surface, some calcification or evaporites being formed around the pump there. Very high mineral content, indicative again of that 1,502 ppm that was attained. In the remit of essentially acquiring all lithium-bearing licenses in the country, last year we acquired Urgaknaran, which is rightly so means the rising sun. It is 29,000 hectares. It is in Dorngovi province, and that's important because Erlian, which is the major border crossing into China, runs across that province. So the railway is in place. You have Rio Tinto and the rest of the strategics shipping their concentrates using that very same artery into China for refinement. So we're very close to that infrastructure and in the province that is precisely where we need to be operating in. That's an aerial shot of the asset. So your dry salt lake beds, very similar to what you would see in the Atacama or in Argentina. The scale of that asset is in and around the 7 kilometer by about 5 kilometer wide. It is a 29,000 hectare license, as I mentioned, with 17,000 hectare basin. So very similar in size or scale as to what you would find at Lithium, for instance. We initially planned 73 holes. That's my hand there from a site visit about a month ago or so. Picking up the crystals, that's a brine sample obtained on surface in natural evaporation ponds. We've now assayed that brine sample. We've also done 8 of our TEM lines, and we've completed all our overhauls. So I apologize that this slide here is dated. The image on the right there, as you can see, the natural evaporation ponds on the surface, that's us and our team collecting samples. And we have now found a grade of 918 milligrams per liter on surface based on that bottle. So that's important because that tells you that it's very similar to what you would expect to see in Nevada in South America. So Dr. Mark King, if you read that quote, I know I'm going to try and keep time at a constraint here, but that's the team on site, Eng Tushin, Mark, Don, and myself. That's our exploration camp on site. We had 25 people turning drills, assaying, as well as doing hydrogeological sampling. Why Mongolia? We believe it to be a low cost to do business as a result of not bringing in expensive expats. We're located in infrastructure-rich regions. As I mentioned, we're very close to the Chinese border. We're not 15,000 nautical miles from China, which is where they get the vast majority of their lithium, LATAM or Australia. We know the world is going electric. I think this, if we're not sort of switched on with this, then we might have sort of missed the news in the last 2 years or so. But China continues to dominate lithium production. And that's important because our proximity to that market makes us a company that should not be sort of put aside. On the back of that exploration program that we had at Bavayul, where we were scratching the surface of this behemoth of a license, we also found copper and nickel anomalies. That's important because as a battery metals player with lithium, you also need copper and you need nickel to essentially fund the growth of battery production. We were able to find very strong copper nickel anomalies on our assets, and so we entered into a joint venture or a reciprocal mining rights agreement with a commonly controlled copper company in Mongolia by the name of Orangian Resources. And the goal there is to have reciprocal mining rights that allow us to monetize the copper and nickel that we find on ION's assets, but it also allows us to go out there to Orangian's assets and look for lithium that we can potentially monetize as well. So happy to chat on this at a later time, or give me a ring if you have any questions. As a company, 60 million shares outstanding today, so quite a tight cap table. Our initial go public transaction was at 30 cents a unit with a 40-cent warrant. Some of those 40-cent warrants have converted, but if the rest of them were to convert, that's about 4 million back in the bank. We then did a bought deal with Stifel GMP as well as PI Financial last March. We raised $5.75 million at 50 cents a unit with a 70-cent warrant. We now, as of the end of last year, have $4 million in the bank in Mongolia. That's sufficient for you to operate for at least 18 to 24 months. So we're not in a cash crunch. We're purely marketing our story because we think we're massively undervalued relative to our peers. In terms of management and insider ownership, we control 25% of the company. That's by design. We participated in every financing at every round, and we continue to be some of the biggest buyers on market today. Mongolian investors that have physically invested in the company have about 9% of the company. Family offices, London, New York, Zurich, about 7%. And then a number of funds across the Americas and Canada own anywhere between 17 and 21% of the company. We closed the market last week on Friday at 33 cents, giving us a market cap of 19.9 million Canadian. We're also trading on the QB, as mentioned earlier, and we closed there at 25 cents for a market cap of 11.5 million USD. So we've been quite aggressive in our growth strategy. We started the company in 2017. We got our first license in 2019. We started trading in 2020, and we've now drilled over 300 holes across both our assets. So we're not sitting on our assets. We're actively pursuing exploration and returning those results to the market. One of the delays that we've had as a company is the fact that we're operating in a jurisdiction that has never had lithium brine exploration. If you look at companies in Chile, in Argentina, in Bolivia, in Australia, the skill set exists in country. So they were able to sort of have this run over the last 18 to 24 months where their equity price has really skyrocketed as a result of work being done. We waited until this year to really get the bulk of the work done to ensure that we're bringing the necessary experts to country to do things right the first time around in the interest of shareholders. And as a result of what we're seeing today, we couldn't be more excited or encouraged. So that's a really quick summary of the company in terms of what you can expect from us. Obviously, we've been to site, we've started exploration programs. We've shown you that we have 918 milligrams per liter on surface at Urgaknaren, and we have a corporate video on our website that I would encourage you to watch that allows you to watch an interview between ourselves and our strategic advisors. We have interest from strategics, so we currently have some inbounds that are looking to take a part in the company, and we'll start to take those forward as well. In terms of our comparisons, a quick slide here that shows you a mix of results from paid research that peg us at between $1 and $1.14 per share Canadian and around 48 cents in the US. Another comp on your right here is a company named Wealth Minerals. They're over in the Atacama, and they have yet to drill a hole, but they're trading about 147. I beg your pardon. 114 today versus our 19 or so. So hopefully in that conversation, I've shown you that we are fully funded. We're not looking for an equity raise at this time. Our location is rather strategic given our proximity to the largest consumer on the planet. I hope I've shown you that we are a team that is experienced, that has a strong track record. We all know that lithium is rising in demand. We know we can have a low cost production profile, and we believe we're well positioned to provide shareholder value. So thank you for your time, and I'm open to questions.
Well, thank you, Ali. That was very interesting here, and I like to start with one obvious question here. Is there any impact from the Russian war in Ukraine?
Fantastic question. Obviously, one that is front of mind for us and that gets asked rather regularly. So I appreciate you bringing that up. The relationship between Russia and Mongolia is such that it was rather influential in its architecture, in its fashion sense, and also its primary supplier of oil and gas. But that continues to flow through the border. In terms of goods and services, the largest trading partner is China. So 80 to 90% of all goods and services traded between Mongolia and any other nation ends up with China. So that border is open. It has been since the sort of pandemic restrictions were lifted, and we're not seeing any impact as a result of that today.
No, so it's a more of a historical than an actual factual exposure. And also, can I expose my ignorance here and just give us a short glance about the political situation in Mongolia? And why I bring that up is that obviously you might consider that as a risk. But having said that, if you're an actor in Europe, you are actually experiencing a fiscal policy that is at risk. So I mean, it's a fair balance there, but I need to ask the question then.
Absolutely. So Mongolia was part of, it was a Soviet satellite, but it was never part of the USSR. In 1991, they gained independence. Since then, they've had three political parties that are democratic in nature. They have elections every 4 years. There is the People's Party and the Democratic Party, of which one member sits as president, which is essentially the head of state. In a figurative manner, and then you have the prime minister who's from the People's Party. So the Democratic Party is the president, the People's Party is now the prime minister. We've seen the cycle change since 2009, having been there for now 13 years. We've seen power shift from each party to the next, and we've also seen through conversations that we've had with government is that they both sing the same song. So the People's Party and the Democratic Party have unequivocally said that the country is open for investment. In fact, I would encourage any of our listeners here today that are going to be at PDAC this year in June in Toronto to come by and come to Mongolia Day, where we have over 50 delegates from the Mongolian government visiting Toronto this year to help talk about why Mongolia is a good investment jurisdiction.
So basically, you pay your taxes and you take care of the workers, and it will be business as anywhere else. I take it. Can I just
That's exactly right.
Yeah. And could I just ask you? You're talking about the proximity to China. Do you get any help with the infrastructure? Do you need to own the infrastructure? You showed a slide there with the BHP, and if memory serves, they like to own the whole system. So where are you on that?
So on that front, I think, you look at Mongolia as a nation, go back as far as Genghis Khan. This is an empire that really spanned across the vast majority of Europe and Eurasia. And so they have some historical roads and paths that were built, hundreds of years ago that, in my view, are better than most highways in the Western world. So they might be dirt roads, but they are rather smooth. So in terms of actually getting to your assets, that's not an issue. The roads are very, very flat and smooth relative to anything that's operating in the Atacama or Tibet, which Zijin just invested $740 million in a lithium mine in Tibet, about 4,500 meters above sea level. So you're driving on relatively flat land. That's one from a transportation perspective. So you can see here based on these images. And then two, in terms of power, Rio Tinto has been tasked with building a power plant in Dorngovi province that would ultimately help power Urgaknaran. But in Sukbatar, you have one of the largest wind farms in Asia being constructed as well. So power will not be an issue. In terms of additional sort of resources and oil and gas coming online in Mongolia to help provide the necessary fuel for the future, Reliance of India is building an oil refinery, again, in Dorngovi. So the infrastructure in place is quite robust. And the fact that the likes of Rio Tinto have built that infrastructure necessary to ship the raw materials that need further refinement down to China already, we would be piggybacking off of their infrastructure developments, and we wouldn't have a massive capex cost as a result of that.
It sounds like a match made in heaven. So you have some very good assets, and you have an infrastructure that is functional and will be even better. Could I just ask you then? You're referring to cost, and cost inflation for any company in the world now is obviously an issue. Well, what do you see? Because obviously, if you need skilled labor, you need to pay.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, in terms of skilled labor, let's not forget that Mongolia has enough skill set in country to allow essentially any mining company to be successful. It is a big part of their GDP. One way that we are able to hedge this is the fact that Mongolia is currently facing, inflation much like the rest of the world, as you pointed out. But the US dollar continues to increase against major currencies. We continue to not only raise funds, but we hedge our Canadian funds with US dollars in Canada, and we pay all our contractors in US dollars as well. So we're not really exposed to that inflationary risk, if you will, because we do hedge our USD and we pay in USD, and that ultimately incentivizes Mongolian contractors and employees to sort of come on board as at the forefront of what we're trying to accomplish, as opposed to being shied away because they're being paid in local currency or any other currency for that matter. So
you have a local knowledge and a local presence, but then you have the global know-how, because you finance in dollars, of course. How difficult is it to get a license? Because as you have clearly pointed out with the presentation, Mongolia seems to be very interesting here, and lithium is obviously something that everybody needs. So what about competition, barriers of entry?
Very valid question. So in terms of competition and barriers to entry, Mongolia, us being first movers in the lithium space, as I pointed out, a number of tenements are released by the Ministry of Mining on an annual basis. Those are then put out to the public, who then ultimately bid for these licenses through an entity that shows not only the capacity to raise the necessary capital, but also has a team ready and able to explore and de-risk these assets, as opposed to a number of companies that might sit on them and ultimately try and flip them to competition, as you've rightly pointed out. In our case, we've gone after the licenses through the proper tender process. We've shown that we have a team and the financial backing to ensure that these assets are de-risked. And this is why we believe that in the last two cycles for both Bavayul and Urgaknaran, we were granted the licenses for exploration. As I mentioned before, we've now drilled over 300 holes on both these assets. So we're not sitting still. We're not sitting on the sidelines looking to flip these assets. And we have the social license in place with the government where we're employing locals. We're working with locals to ensure that they're being trained so they can ultimately come on the project as they develop their skills. And we're also buying, meat, dairy from the co-ops in the neighboring municipalities. So the social license is being checked off. We're showing that we're de-risking the assets. We're bringing a world-class team. We're hosting the Mongolian government here in Canada during PDAC. We're a team that's ultimately allowed Mongolia, based on historical sort of Rio Tinto challenges, to come back on the map. We currently have 3 companies trading here in Canada that are Mongolian-centric. And as a result of that, we've had nothing but government support. In terms of competition, it's only a matter of time before we see some majors stepping into Mongolia looking for lithium. And if that's the case, then it just makes us want to work that much harder. So, valid question.
But also one could argue that if you get more competition, then obviously there will be much more focus from the mining market and the investor markets, which at the end actually will be good. So you will get some, let's say, marketing help from your competitors. Would that be fair?
Indeed, and it's absolutely fair. And let's call a spade. We've said unequivocally from day one that Ion Energy will not be a producer of lithium. We will always be a company that de-risks, acquires, and comes to an early resource indication. So as competition continues to come into country, and if we're sitting on what we believe to be world-class assets, then what better way to fulfill our prophecy of ultimately exiting and providing shareholder value?
All right, excellent and very interesting. And just one final question here, because you mentioned your balance sheet, and I understand that you're very happy with that and it's healthy. And also you showed us your timeline here. So coming end of year or something, you will have some sort of partnership. And that means not necessarily an exit, but if there is, let's say, a partnership, or if you will indeed go to the market, that will probably then be on back of very, very good news. I'm being a little bit provocative here, but
indeed. No, so you have to consider the fact that strategics are moving rather quickly today. We're seeing more and more M&A activity in the lithium space. Our goal is to have a strategic partner with us before the end of the year. Based on the way things are going, it could happen sooner or later. The volatility of the markets has not helped with respect to ensuring that we're trading above what our last equity raise was at. But I think that provides the retail investor base a massive opportunity to come in cheaper than those that would have come in last year. So the goal for us, given we are funded, is to continue to execute. And if we have either a strategic partner come in for a chunk of the company before the end of the year, or ultimately have a complete exit, is yet to be determined. I think short to say, or suffices to say, by the end of the year, there will be an announcement, be it an equity raise or an ultimate acquisition.
Excellent. Very interesting. Well, Ali, thank you very much. Very educational, extremely thrilling, and we appreciate that. So we will watch this space, and not that you need it, but we wish you good luck anyway. So thank you so much.
Thanks very much, it's been a pleasure.
Ja, my pleasure. Och med det så tackar vi er som har tittat och hälsar er välkomna till nästa investerarafton som kommer faktiskt att vara imorgon. Tack ska ni ha, på återseende och återhörande. Hej då.